Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, in the absence of PMQs, I'd like to discuss the continuing backlash to Rishi Sunak's capitulation to the climate change deniers as his business secretary tries to claim that businesses privately tell her that they love it when the Tories screw up all their plans. And there's more loose talk of a snap general election as the Tories descend into further internal strife. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, yes, I now notice that Parliament had already gone into recess for the conference season. Didn't need to happen. We usually get 3 PMQs before that happens. We could have actually gone into recess at the end of today, having had another chance to ask Rishi Sunak a few questions. I obviously failed to take into account just how much the Prime Minister hates being in Parliament. But never mind, because the story I was discussing in the first video about Sunak reining back on net zero is really kicking off. So let's go over the various products of the Tory rumour mill so far today. I will just point out that as the video comes out, Rishi Sunak will have just given a speech about the proposals outside Downing Street. I ummed and ahed about waiting until he'd done that, and I thought, no, I don't really need to wait. I know what he's going to say. It's been widely reported what he's going to say. What is of interest to me is the political reasons for doing it. So let's go over some. The first would be that some of the net zero commitments are now considered undeliverable in the stated time frame. Some Tories are trying to claim this is because Boris Johnson was a little bit too cavalier, a little bit too optimistic with the old deadlines. In reality, it is because the Tories dragged their feet on the investment needed to make it happen. Some are trying to claim that the delay, for example, on banning sales of new combustion engine cars, just brings it in line with the EU. So what's the problem? Well, EU targets like this are always on the generous side because the membership includes some less advanced economies who will take longer. The bottom line is that the 2030 target for the UK was seen and is seen as deliverable by British industry. With Sunak claiming that it no longer is, he's giving Labour the green light to say that we're now falling behind because of Tory incompetence. And the beauty of this line is that it will be supported. Is Boris Johnson going to accept that he did not meticulously formulate his targets? No, of course not. He'll fire back by saying that Sunak as Chancellor is responsible for frustrating his plans. In fact, Johnson has already popped his head above the parapet to urge Sunak to stick with the targets. I think I might be able to guess what Boris Johnson is going to be writing about in the Mail, although actually, given that the Daily Mail supports Sunak schemes, who knows? We'll see. And this will not be a Tories against Labour argument. It'll be everyone against Sunak and the climate change deniers crew. Like, the only benefit to Sunak is that it might pull Truss within his orbit. But that may not be a great association from the voting public's point of view. You know, has Sunak done this as a long-term strategy to salt the earth for Labour? Is he trying to screw things over for Labour? You know, when you consider just what a dog's dinner Sunak is making of getting the Tories ready for the election, it's natural to think that what he's doing is just feathering his own nest and leaving as big a mess for Labour as possible. And if he hangs on for another year, yes, he is going to leave a bigger mess for Labour to deal with because affected industries are doing their nut here. You know, we got a clip of a Tory WhatsApp discussion where the business secretary, Kemi Badenoch, was trying to calm Simon Clarke's concerns down. And she said, oh, you know, these businesses, they say one thing in public, but actually they say different things privately to me. She was basically trying to claim that they tell her privately that they don't mind at all when the Tories tear up their investment plans on a whim. This is, of course, ludicrous. An ITV correspondent was reporting that the car industry is furious because the government gave them assurances just last week, which, by the time this video comes out, Sunak will have thrown into the fire. One problem for the Tories seems to be that they think that the outrage expressed by industry is just like a form of lobbying for favourable terms, that they're just kicking up a fuss to try and get better terms for themselves. Now, yes, obviously businesses do lobby. They do make statements both publicly and privately, which are designed to get what they want from the government. Absolutely. But it will be 100% not the case that businesses who've been investing hundreds of millions, remember the government keep boasting about the hundreds of millions that this company and that company is investing into this getting ready for 2030. on a project and a timeline which had cross-party support. The idea that these businesses are going, oh, well, doesn't matter, does it? About the government suddenly changing it. No, it's a lot of money. You know, I talked about Ford's reaction this morning. Then Tory MP Brendan Clark-Smith tried to dismiss it. It's just Ford, ignore them. Well, since then, we've had negative reactions from, say, Jaguar Land Rover, BMW, others within the industry slamming this policy change. I mean, yesterday, banks were the enemy of the people. Today, it's car manufacturers. But it's not just the car industry having a pop. Energy industry as well. So within the space of 24 hours, we've had the ultra-capitalist Tories try to tell us that both banks and large industrial corporations are the enemy. What a time to be alive. And we are reminded that when the Chinese say, may you live in interesting times, it is meant as a curse. I'd also just throw this into the mix. So for those, and there were some comments on my first video saying, oh, the targets are unrealistic. You know, why did so many large companies invest so much money into it then? If they didn't believe the timeline was real, why didn't they just say, well, this isn't realistic? Come up with a realistic time frame, then we'll talk. The people delivering this project thought it was achievable. They committed money to it. The only people saying otherwise are people on Twitter, most of whom seem to have been reading what the Tufton Street conspiracy theory mill has been churning out. You know, Labour have got their annual conference just over 2 weeks. They were already going to be running it on the theme of taking back our future. This is going to be so much more compelling now that the Tories are behaving like this. Labour will not only have the bandwidth to push their own green industrial strategy over the next couple of weeks, but get the opportunity to highlight Tory incompetence. Because however badly the Tories have screwed the country by the time we get to boot Sunak out of Downing Street, progress will be made by Labour. And then Labour will be able to show the difference that competence makes at the following election as well. And in a surprise to nobody, Labour have said that they will be back in the car industry, as good as saying that they can disregard what Sunak is saying today because in about a year's time there'll be a different government. Sunak will be in California, a bother to nobody. Also, if this is a misguided attempt to salt the earth for Labour, how many Tory MPs are in on it? After all, if we believe that the Tories are now engaged in a strategy to screw things up for Labour because they can't win the election, which if you look at things, you'd think, well, yeah, they may be doing that. That is a strategy which requires the wholesale sacrifice of a staggering number of Tory MPs. How do they feel about this? Are they even aware? A couple more things. There's been renewed talk of a snap general election at the risk of looking silly in case Sunak actually announces that this afternoon. I don't think so. Apart from anything else, if he does, I'll be pulling this video. But if anything, this makes it less likely. You know, less likely that the Tories will have any stomach for an election anytime soon. In fact, the speculative cynic in me is even wondering if this is Sunak's way of stopping the Tories melting down this autumn to the point where a snap election is forced. Because if an election were to happen anytime soon, not only would the Conservatives be well behind in the polls, which is bad enough, but they'll have a manifesto in complete chaos now. Labour HQ, on the other hand, must think Christmas has come early. This is win-win for Labour. I mean, let's imagine that you think that Labour may have had to tone down some of these deadlines. Well, they just blame the Tories for doing it now because the Tories will have done it before they ever come to power. But, as is much more likely, if Labour commit themselves to restoring these deadlines, and they probably will have done by the time this video comes out, but I think they're going to, and then actually achieve them, well then, they get to say that they succeeded not only where the Tories failed, but where the Tories did not even think it was worth trying. The Tories thought it was so impossible, it wasn't even worth trying. Labour will go, we just came along and did it, you know what I mean? That should be good for another election win at least, shouldn't it? Finally, worth noting that Sunak's speech today was not planned. As I mentioned earlier today, the speech was supposed to be on Friday, maybe to overshadow the Lib Dem conference beginning this weekend. But the story was leaked, so Sunak's had to go panic a little bit, rush out the speech today. This is not planned. The next few weeks are going to be interesting now. Sunak has committed his party to fighting a divergent narrative on net zero. Now, for all the difference between Labour and the Tories, this was not supposed to be one of them. Labour MPs will surely be more confident than Tory MPs that they're going to win this one. I can only speculate as to why Sunak is going ahead with this, because everything I come up with sounds mad. Strategically, I'd have thought it makes more sense to maintain the commitment Even if you think you're going to lose the next election, in fact, especially if you think you're going to lose the next election, maintain the commitment, hope that Labour fail to achieve at least one of the targets, then blame Labour, blame Starmer for wrecking their work on the Green Agenda, say, well, we set it all up, it was there, and then they've gone and fouled it all up. And if Labour succeed, well, the Tories would just say, well, we laid the groundwork for it, Labour just ran it home. But now the Tories have surrendered completely. If Labour win the election, as is very, very likely, and they achieve the original targets, where do the Tories go then? Absolute madness. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.